World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star. Today's live reading is brought to us, as it is each and every day, by the Omaha Association of the Blind. And we'd like to welcome now on this Friday morning our fine readers. Let's welcome in Ralph Morocco and Bob Godding. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Paul, and good morning, listeners. This is Bob Godding. I will be reading the Omaha World Herald today.
And I'm Ralph Morocco with the Lincoln Journal-Star. We'll begin with news from Washington. Donald Trump defeated 16 rivals in the Republican primaries by being the most anti-immigrant of them all, promising to build a giant wall on the border and deport millions. He labeled opponents like Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio as weak and amnesty-loving. And his extreme rhetoric pushed the entire immigration debate to the right. But suddenly, Trump is sounding like some of the people he defeated. In an appearance on Fox News Channel's Hannity show Wednesday, Trump discussed how tough it is to break up families for deportation, suggesting that maybe understanding people who've been in this country for years should be allowed to stay if they pay back taxes, and insisting Bush and Rubio were repeatedly forced to do that such actions would not amount to amnesty. Everywhere I go, I get the same reaction. They want toughness. They want firmness. They want to obey the law, Trump said. But they feel that throwing them out as a whole family when they've been here for a long time, it's a tough thing. Trump's exact meaning was murky, and it was unclear if he was unveiling a new stance or simply trying out new rhetoric to appeal to a general election audience as he lags Democratic Hillary Clinton in polls 11 weeks before the election. His new campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, insisted on CNN Thursday that nothing has changed in terms of the policies. And Trump seemed to backtrack yet again less than 24 hours later, saying on CNN's Anderson Cooper 360 Thursday evening that he would not grant any legal status to immigrants here illegally unless they leave the United States first, something that would be burdensome and impractical when applied to millions of people. There is no path to legalization unless they leave the country and come back, he said. Still, Trump's new language seemed to reveal an awareness that his unyielding stance against immigrants is unlikely to get him to the White House, with Latino voting in growing numbers in key states. He's learned painfully, belatedly, that what stirs up a large part of the Republican primary electorate is not what wins general elections, said John Rowe, a GOP donor and former CEO of Exelon, who's planning to vote for Libertarian Gary Johnson. You cannot win without women, Asians, Latinos, African Americans. In an interview Thursday on ABC, Bush called Trump's positioning abhorrent, saying, "I can only say that whatever his views are this morning, they might change this afternoon. And they were different than they were last night, and they'll be different tomorrow." Clinton, speaking on CNN, dismissed Trump's shifting language as a desperate effort to try to land somewhere that isn't as devastating to his campaign as his comments and his positions have been up until now. There were signs that Trump risked angering hardcore supporters who helped him win the nomination. Conservative commentator Ann Coulter, who published a book called In Trump We Trust, reacted with angry tweets to Trump's comments on Fox, including remarking sardonically, "Well, if it's hard, then never mind." GOP Representative Steve King of Iowa, a leading immigrant hardliner, said in an interview that "I have some concerns at this point over Trump's stance." The upside for Trump was not immediately apparent. Immigrant advocates argued he would gain no ground with Hispanics by giving lip service to limited pro-immigrant measures while still insisting on the need for a border wall. Advocates speculated that Trump's goal was to woo independent voters who might support him, but who are turned off by his harsher stances.
From Los Angeles, Surveying the devastation of centuries old villages pummeled by a major earthquake in central Italy this week, it's easy for Californians to think that the more modern buildings would better survive the shaking. But seismic experts and structural engineers say there remain many buildings across California that could not withstand the type of magnitude 6.2 earthquake that on Wednesday hit, I think it's Amitris, and other rural villages in the Apennine Mountains that form Italy's spine. The structural flaw in those ancient stone homes is not so different from unreinforced brick buildings constructed in California before 1933, they say. That year, the Long Beach earthquake flattened many structures and left 120 people dead. The Long Beach quake shares several similarities to this week's quake in Italy. It was slightly more powerful, estimated at magnitude 6.4, and like this week's quake, was shallow, meaning the shaking was particularly strong at ground level. The shaking in Long Beach turned the mortar between the bricks back into sand. With nothing tying the walls to the roof, bricks shot out from walls like cannonballs, and roofs came crashing down. Numerous office buildings, stores, and schools collapsed. The devastation began decades of earthquake safety measures in California, including a ban on new brick buildings that have not been reinforced. Some cities, including Los Angeles and San Francisco, force property owners to retrofit or demolish existing unreinforced masonry structures, but thousands remain. Officials have expressed particular concern about cities including San Bernardino and Bakersfield, where there are clusters of these buildings and no retrofitting requirement. They are unbelievably dangerous buildings, said structural engineer Kit Mayu-Atsuto, a member of the California Seismic Safety Commission who has visited Italy before to study earthquake damage. The things that we see in Italy, there will be similar things that we see here. In central Italy, the quake also damaged brittle concrete buildings built in the 1960s and 70s. Jean-Michel Calvi, structural design professor at the Institute for Advanced Study of Pavia, said Thursday in a telephone interview, hundreds of similar buildings, mostly unretrofitted, exist across California. But the lion's share of casualties in Italy are believed to have been people trapped in the rubble of unreinforced stone homes that date to medieval times, Calvi said. It was just terrifying, really. Quite a bit of destruction, U.S. Geological Survey geologist Kate Scherer said. It's one of the most problematic types of buildings for withstanding even moderate magnitude earthquakes. Brick and brittle concrete buildings have been the focus of much debate in recent years. Los Angeles last year passed the nation's toughest earthquake safety rules requiring retrofitting of brittle concrete buildings, and San Francisco is studying similar rules. There also has been a push in some areas to deal with vulnerable brick buildings after recent California quakes highlighted the dangers. After the 2014 Napa earthquake, South Pasadena began to study its seismic vulnerabilities. The results were disturbing. Out of 60 brick buildings, 27 still not retrofitted. Signs were not posted warning about the earthquake risk. Last week, the South Pasadena City Council voted to require the rest of them to be fixed, giving owners a deadline of 2.5 years once they receive a new order to comply. The affected buildings include commercial and multi-unit residential structures. Safety is not negotiable, said City Manager Sergio Gonzalez. The city is over 125 years old, and we want to work with owners so that all our residents and patrons are safe. Retrofitting a brick building is relatively inexpensive. The basic approach involves pushing steel rods to affix the brick wall to the building ceilings and floors. Most extensive versions involve installing diagonal braces or adding reinforced concrete or polymers to the walls. You basically have 4 walls being held up by the weight of the roof, so when they shake, there's nothing to keep them together, Gonzalez said. The reinforcement allows people enough time to get out safely once the shaking has stopped. Concrete buildings are generally much larger than brick ones. They can cost more than $1 million to fix, making them far more expensive. The earthquake in Italy is similar to the kinds of earthquakes seen in California. Even a magnitude 6 earthquake can cause severe damage if it's shallow and it hits directly underneath a populated area. It was kind of a perfect storm locally, said USGS seismologist Susan Huff. Italy's earthquake struck only 6 miles deep. By contrast, a magnitude 6.8 quake that struck Myanmar also on Wednesday was more than 8 times deeper and caused far less damage and far fewer deaths. Think of an earthquake as a bomb underground, Huff said. Whether it's 6 miles below your feet or 50 miles down makes a big difference. Other shallow earthquakes have walloped California in the past, such as the 5.9 Whittier Narrows earthquake of 1987, which severely damaged brick buildings in Pasadena, Alhambra, and Whittier. You don't expect very long shaking, but it can be very intense, especially for unreinforced brick construction, which there's quite a bit of in Italy, said Tom Heaton, Caltech professor of engineering seismology. If you're in the wrong building, you can be in a lot of danger.
The maker of EpiPen announced Thursday that it will help more patients pay for the life-saving allergy injection, bowing to intense criticism from politicians, doctors, and patients over the drug's soaring list price. Mylan's decision to offer patients a coupon and expanded financial assistance was criticized by politicians and insurers, who called the move a superficial gesture that still leaves some patients and their health plans saddled with the full cost. This step seems more like a PR fix than a real remedy, masking an exorbitant and callous price hike, said Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Connecticut Democrat who this week called on the Senate Judiciary Committee and Federal Trade Commission to investigate Mylan. The only fair and effective relief is a substantial price reduction for everyone who needs access to this life-saving drug. A 2-pack of the injectors, which release epinephrine to stop an allergic reaction, has risen from less than $100 in 2007 to $8 today. Mylan said the company never intended for patients to pay the full price, expecting insurers would carry the load. We recognize the significant burden on patients from continued rising insurance premiums and being forced increasingly to pay the full list price for medicines at the pharmacy counter, Chief Executive Heather Bresch said in a statement. Mylan declined to comment about criticism of its coupon offer and additional financial assistance. The debate is the latest to embroil Congress in the battle over increasing drug costs and their role in escalating health insurance premiums. Price is particularly notable because state and federal legislation have been key to the drug's rapid growth. Annual prescriptions for EpiPen products have more than doubled in the past decade to 3.6 million, according to IMS health data. Mylan benefited from factors including failed competitors, patent protections, and laws requiring allergy medications in schools. Having a virtual monopoly has facilitated the rapid price hike. Mylan reached $1 billion in sales for the second time last year. Epinephrine is an old drug, but EpiPen has long been the dominant way of injecting it. Competitors' products had never gained the same traction and suffered setbacks. It's like Kleenex, it's even more dominant, said Wayne Schreffler, Chief of Pediatric Allergy and Immunology at Massachusetts General Hospital. I think academics like me are very careful when speaking to say epinephrine auto-injector, but for most of the community, they just say EpiPen. Mylan lobbied lawmakers, both directly and indirectly, to increase the availability of epinephrine auto-injectors in U.S. schools. Although these legislative efforts were not supposed to benefit a particular company, the brand has such a lock on the market that when President Obama signed the School Access to Emergency Epinephrine Act in 2013, a news announcement simply called it the EpiPen Law. The law gave financial incentives to states to enact their own mandates for schools to stock epinephrine auto-injectors and allowed trained school personnel to administer the treatment to students. Undesignated auto-injectors can be used on students, even if the prescription is not in their name. That was a Trojan horse, said David Morris, a Wells Fargo analyst. That was, let's get it in schools to help people, but it helps market EpiPen and promote it as the trusted product in schools.
From Yorba Linda, California, when the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum first opened 26 years ago, it was dismissed by many historians as more of a whitewash than a faithful retelling of his presidency. For years, the museum's Watergate exhibit, approved by Nixon, depicted the scandal as a coup orchestrated by Nixon enemies and unethical journalists. Historian and Nixon scholar Stanley Cutler once called the library just another Southern California theme park whose reality level was slightly better than Disneyland. But in 2007, when the library finally entered the official presidential library system under the auspices of the National Archives, the exhibit was torn down and eventually replaced with a much more critical version. The museum's heavily edited version of the smoking gun tape that implicated Nixon was replaced with the full recording, and the new exhibit placed the Watergate episode in the context of a larger campaign of presidential secrecy and sabotage. Now, a $15 million renovation focuses on the rest of the museum's decades-old galleries, set to reopen in October, with the aim of building an unflinching but well-rounded portrait of a complicated man whose long career has often been overshadowed by his quick and stunning fall from grace. Anybody and everybody who's taken a critical look at this is going to look at it through the lenses of a failed presidency, ultimately a president who resigned. And they wonder, what are they trying to cover up, said Michael Elzy, director of the museum since 2014 and an employee of the National Archives and Records Administration, which jointly operates the site. The intellectual honesty and integrity of this was very important to us. We wanted to be beyond reproach. While the updated Watergate exhibit was unveiled in 2011, the redesign of the rest of the galleries, with some 70-plus exhibits, completes a process that began more than a decade ago to bring greater legitimacy and historical honesty to the Nixon Library. The renovation is being paid for by funds raised by the Nixon Foundation, but the gallery designs and exhibit content will be the result of an ongoing collaboration between the foundation and the federal government. We've got a generation of guests that were either born after or know very little about this president, said Bill Barabout, president of the Nixon Foundation. Nixon, for many of those who didn't live the history, has become synonymous with the scandal that led to his political downfall and ultimately his resignation. But Barabout said few people know about his far-reaching policy feats, which include founding the Environmental Protection Agency, signing into law Title IX, which banned gender bias in colleges and universities receiving federal funding, and ending the military draft. It's a chance to tell the complete story, Barabout said. One of Elzy's first tasks was to ease long-simmering tensions between the leadership of the Nixon Foundation and the National Archives over the portrayal of Nixon's legacy. The sometimes contentious relationship has deep roots. The library opened in 1990, built with $21 million from the private Nixon Foundation, with a board that was, and still is, composed largely of Nixon loyalists, including his daughters Tricia Nixon Cox and Julie Nixon Eisenhower. Nixon attended its opening along with 3 other presidents and with a crowd of 50,000 people. Nothing we have ever seen matches this moment to be welcomed home again, Nixon said. An act of Congress stemming from a fear that Nixon supporters would destroy crucial papers if given the chance, mandated in 1974 that his presidential records stay with the National Archives and therefore out of the library. When the library finally joined the federal presidential library system, its first director, historian Timothy Naftali, set his sights on the library's discredited Watergate narrative. But Naftali received tremendous pushback, much of it from Nixon loyalists and former deputies, who filed a 132-page letter of objection that held up the 2011 opening for months. Supporters of the former president even employed hardball tactics, temporarily tying up Senate confirmation of U.S. archivist David Ferriero over the issue. Naftali resigned 8 months after the Watergate exhibit reopened. The museum was without a director for 3 years until Elzy was appointed in 2014. In the end, Elsie said both sides agreed that Nixon's legacy would be well served by a museum that hewed to the historical record. This was a good man who accomplished many things, who ultimately failed in certain ways and then fought back. It's just a good story to tell. When the library reopens in October, visitors will pass through exhibits chronicling the chaos of the late 1960s, Nixon's pitch as the law and order candidate, his election and inauguration, and the Oval Office. In the newly expanded Vietnam War exhibit will be a replica of a safe that contained the troop report for the conflict on the day of Nixon's inauguration. It was a parting gift from President Lyndon Johnson that Nixon left untouched as a stark reminder until the war was over. The museum will have a large gallery depicting Nixon's top domestic and foreign policy achievements, including his environmental initiatives, his role in desegregating schools in the South.
At 20 minutes past the hour, we'll turn to local and regional news. The prison where inmates attacked and injured 9 staff members Wednesday evening needs a bigger staffing boost than any other Nebraska prison. A 6-person review team reached that conclusion following a year-long study of staffing in Nebraska prisons, which ended this summer, the Lincoln Journal-Star learned. Across the Nebraska Department of Correctional Services, the review team requested 138 full-time custody positions, an $11 to $14 million expense for an agency that is already struggling to fill existing vacancies. Nearly a third of that figure, 44 positions, would be for additional custody staff at the Lincoln Correctional Center, according to a summary of the review team's findings. While adding employees does not necessarily increase safety, a strong, visible command and control of the facility has the ability to improve officer and inmate safety, the summary reads. Late Thursday, Governor Pete Ricketts told lawmakers he would consider raising salaries for corrections workers and making other changes to address retention if union leaders agreed to renegotiate their contract. We will be seeking additional flexibility to reward and retain job performers, increase base salaries, and provide alternative shifts, the governor said in a letter to legislative leaders. Ricketts said he reached out to Mike Marvin, executive director of the state employee union, to immediately begin labor negotiations for correction staff, independent of other state workers. Lincoln Correctional Center was fully staffed at the time of Wednesday's incident, but a spokeswoman said some corrections officers were working overtime due to vacancies. Rescue workers swarmed the medium maximum security prison near Pioneers Park at 3216 West Van Dorn Street on Wednesday after a group of inmates refused to leave an isolated yard on the prison grounds and return to their cells shortly after 6 p.m., said prison spokeswoman Tammy Kluber. One inmate hit a staffer and others followed, assaulting several corrections officers and caseworkers before being restrained. 9 staff members were taken to the hospital, treated, and released overnight. On Thursday, Corrections Director Scott Frakes said the incident cannot be attributed to crowding or staffing levels. Inmates made the choice to harm staff, he said in a statement. But key state lawmakers said violence in Nebraska prisons appears to be getting worse. My overall concern is that it's escalating, said Senator Les Sealer of Hastings, who heads the legislature's Judiciary Committee, along with a special committee investigating problems with the State Corrections Department. Members of the special committee will quiz Frakes about staffing issues during a public hearing on August 31. Wednesday's violence will undoubtedly come up. About a dozen inmates involved in the incident had been identified by early Thursday, Kluber said. They were placed in a segregated area and the prison was locked down. Investigators with the Nebraska State Patrol were reviewing video footage of the incident and working to determine if other inmates were involved, Kluber said. She confirmed they were looking into whether an inmate triggered the incident because he was upset about being transferred to another prison. No injuries to inmates were reported. One female staffer suffered a pretty good cut to her head and they ended up stapling, Kluber said. She described the other injuries as cuts, swollen faces, and sore backs. State Senator Colby Coash, whose Lincoln district includes the Correctional Center, said He was told late Wednesday that all hell was breaking loose there. It's time to start listening to the line staff about what they need. They are the ones getting hurt, Koash said. The ones I talk to don't feel listened to. The governor canceled a town hall meeting scheduled in Lexington on Thursday to meet with Frakes and correction staff, including some who were injured. Koash said he was pleased with Thursday's announcement that Ricketts would consider a new labor deal with prison workers. I encourage the union to come to the table immediately and start to work these things out, Koash said. It's a great start, and it needs to happen tomorrow. Marvin, the union leader, couldn't immediately be reached late Thursday.
U.S. authorities say Patricia Urbanovsky, who faces 25 federal charges in connection with the sale of millions of dollars in worthless travel vouchers, violated the terms of her pre-trial release, according to court documents. They say she opened a tab at an Omaha bar with a debit card connected to a checking account that she knew to have a negative balance, allegedly consumed excessive amounts of alcohol, and had her hands in the books of an event planning company, all things she was barred from doing, according to the federal agreement that allowed her out on bail as she awaits trial. Urbanovsky, 31, has been ordered to appear Monday in federal court to respond to the allegations of violating the release terms. Her attorney said in an interview Thursday that he looked forward to being able to tell Urbanovsky's side of the story. The owner of Creative Creations, an Omaha event planning company, was indicted by federal authorities in February, charged with 9 counts of money laundering and 16 counts of wire fraud. Charges were filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office in U.S. District Court in Omaha. If convicted, Urbanovsky would face a prison sentence of 365 years and be fined hundreds of thousands of dollars. Jan Sharp, the chief criminal prosecutor of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Nebraska, said in an interview Thursday that if the judge finds the allegations that Urbanovsky violated her pre-trial release agreement to be true, the judge could do any number of things, including reprimanding Urbanovsky, changing the terms of her release, or ordering her to be detained. Federal authorities allege that Urbanovsky opened a tab in the Rose and Crown pub in Omaha on August 19 using a debit card that she knew to have a negative balance. Under the condition of her federal pretrial release, she is prohibited from incurring new credit charges or opening lines of credit without the approval of one of her supervising officers. When questioned about the incident, she told authorities that she consumed only 1 drink, which is contradicted by the account provided by staff at the bar, according to the court documents. One of the conditions of her release is to refrain from excessive use of alcohol. On June 20, Urbanovsky was instructed by federal authorities not to be an owner or coordinate payments in relation to her employment with the event specialist, an Omaha event planning company that closed its doors this month. Urbanovsky provided financial statements to a probation officer showing her involvement in making payroll payments as late as July 11, according to the court documents. In addition, a review of the financial statements indicated that the defendant had been accruing charges knowing she had a negative balance. More than 20 complaints have been filed against the event specialist with the Better Business Bureau. The BBB has described Urbanovsky as a key employee at the firm. Urbanovsky's attorney, Steve Leffler, has said the event specialist isn't owned by Urbanovsky. He wouldn't say who owns the company. He is listed on state documents as the company's registered agent, but he has said he is not its attorney. Complaints about the firm revolve around unfulfilled contracts for event services and requests for refunds that have not been issued, said Jim Hagerty, president of the BBB in Omaha. With the firm's closing, the BBB is advising people who want to pursue action against it to go through legal channels, Hagerty said. Leffler said he's preparing for next week's hearing. We'll have people from the bar, we'll have people from the event specialist to respond to these allegations, he said. Leffler and Assistant U.S. Attorney Don Klein, who is prosecuting the federal charges, agreed in March that Urbanovsky was not a flight risk or a danger to the community. U.S. Magistrate Judge Thomas Falcon ruled that she be allowed to remain free while awaiting trial. Urbanovsky pleaded not guilty to federal charges in March, but she recently was granted a change of plea hearing September 9 in federal court. Earlier in June 2015, the Douglas County Attorney's Office charged Urbanowski with 3 felony counts of theft for allegedly bilking 3 Creative Creations employees out of $141,000. She was released on bail from the Douglas County Jail in 2015. Through Creative Creations, she is accused of bilking customers who bought air travel vouchers, many of which turned out to be useless. Loeffler has repeatedly said that his client isn't a thief, but simply lacked business acumen, resulting in a series of honest business mistakes. The alleged scam came to light last spring when complaints about Urbanowski's business began trickling into the BBB in Omaha from all over the country. The BBB received 1,600 complaints with alleged losses totaling $1.3 million. Among those affected, Square Inc., the San Francisco payment processing company that ran more than $7 million in payments for the Omaha event planning company, and says it is out more than $4.7 million. Purchasers booked flights through Creative Creations' online portal. Some people were able to successfully book travel through late March 2015, but other would-be travelers came away with nothing. Creative Creations sold vouchers for travel on Southwest Airlines that it said were valid for travel anywhere in the United States for about $150 or less. Southwest was not involved in the voucher sales.
A 49-year-old at a state psychiatric hospital alleges staff there neglected her health concerns and denied her access to tests for so long she developed breast cancer requiring a partial mastectomy. In a federal lawsuit filed Thursday, Ruth Sasetka accuses Lincoln Regional Center staff of violating her constitutional rights by depriving her of appropriate medical care. The Lincoln resident has been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder, which limits her ability to care for herself, her attorneys say in the lawsuit. In January 2013, a Lancaster County District judge found Sasetka not guilty by reason of insanity of attempted second-degree assault of an officer, operating a motor vehicle to avoid arrest, and violating a protection order. She was committed to the regional center later that month. Because there is a family history of breast cancer, Sasetka's doctor recommended she receive annual mammograms to screen for it, the lawsuit said. The last one Sasetka received before being committed to the center was in June 2012, the lawsuit said. Sasetka began asking regional center staff in October 2013 for a woman's health exam, her lawyer said. Those requests were denied until August 2014 when she was taken to see her gynecologist, who later requested Sasetka receive a mammogram, the lawsuit said. A week later, the gynecologist contacted regional center staff inquiring why Sasetka hadn't received the mammogram. Staff made excuses, Sasetka's lawyers said. A month later, a second physician requested Sasetka receive a mammogram. In January 2015, Sasetka began experiencing weakness, fatigue, and pain, the lawsuit said. She didn't receive a breast exam until April 2015, when a regional center nurse practitioner confirmed one of her breasts was larger than the other, her lawyers allege. Sasetka finally received a mammogram that was highly suggestive for malignancy in May 2015, her lawyers said in the lawsuit. A biopsy on June 1 of last year confirmed Sasetka had breast cancer, and as part of her treatment, she received a partial mastectomy later that month, the lawsuit said. Doctors scheduled her to have 36 radiation treatments, and regional center staff denied her many of them, Sasetka's attorneys allege. That year, she requested a housing unit change several times because of unclean conditions, her attorney said. Every request was denied, and in December, Sasetka developed an infection in her breast and later methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. Despite having an open wound from surgery, infections, PTSD, and other conditions, Sasetka was placed in full bed restraints on numerous occasions that further exacerbated her wounds and conditions, was escorted down a hallway naked despite being compliant, and was regularly humiliated by staff, her attorneys allege. Sisetka's lawsuit names several regional center staff administrators and Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services CEO Courtney Phillips. The department oversees the Lincoln Regional Center. A department spokeswoman didn't address the allegations Thursday, saying DHHS hadn't been served. Sisetka is seeking unspecified amount of damages and wants a judge to order the center to provide appropriate and necessary health care and promote policies that ensure health care to patients in the center's care who are disabled, the lawsuit said. Her attorney on Thursday declined to talk about her current health. Sisetka will remain at the center indefinitely. An annual review of her mental health is set for April.
John Rush knows he can't knock on car windows to ask those inside for money. Going to jail or paying a fine if convicted under the City of Omaha's aggressive panhandling ordinance would make his life worse. Most days, the 63-year-old patiently holds a sign that says he's a homeless and hungry veteran, and he waits until someone offers spare change or $1. Last week, he sat at the corner of 30th Street in the off-ramp from the North Freeway. 8 months after the city council overhauled its panhandling ordinance, city leaders say the law is working by preventing intrusive begging without infringing on panhandlers' constitutional rights. But the ordinance doesn't appear to have reduced the number of people panhandling in Omaha. The number of panhandling calls that Omaha police have responded to this year has plummeted because of the ordinance. 911 dispatchers now pass along calls only if a panhandler is deemed aggressive, and it's impossible to know whether the actual number of panhandlers has changed over the years because law-abiding panhandlers are not tracked, Deputy Police Chief David Baker said. But anecdotally, Baker said he thinks the number has increased. Observations from drivers in all parts of the city line up with his assessment. Soliciting money is illegal if done on public property and is not in a threatening manner. Soliciting money is legal if done on public property and is not in a threatening manner, the U.S. Supreme Court has said. Yet officials continue to discourage handling money to those in need on the street. They say it's better to pass along information on organizations that can offer food and shelter services. Before December, Omaha had a panhandling ordinance that said people wanting to solicit money other than religious organizations or charities had to obtain written permission from the police chief. The American Civil Liberties Union threatened to sue over the ordinance, saying it violated the First Amendment. So council members voted in December to restrict only aggressive panhandling. According to the current ordinance, a panhandler cannot be near an ATM, touch or block the path of a person, repeatedly request money, or commit other nuisances. From May 1 to July 31 this year, police have responded to 20 calls of aggressive panhandling. In the same period last year, 220 panhandling-related incidents were reported. Baker said this year, fewer than 5 people have been arrested for aggressive panhandling. I think we're doing the right thing by making sure that officers only go out on those extreme calls, City Council President Ben Gray said. Lincoln's ordinance also restricts aggressive solicitation of money, but it further restricts panhandling. It does not allow panhandling to people in vehicles that are parked or stopped on streets, at a bus stop, in public transportation, or at a sidewalk, patio, or of a restaurant. Panhandlers must act alone because it is unlawful to be in groups of 2 or more. Candace Gregory, president and CEO of the Open Door Mission, said people who give money to panhandlers often are helping support an addiction to drugs or alcohol. Instead, the shelter passes out business card size compassion cards for people to give panhandlers. The cards say the Open Door Mission offers free shelter, food, transportation, clothes, and toiletries, and will pick people up at 14th and Douglas Streets. Gregory suggests giving the cards to panhandlers along with a bottle of water or snack. Residents can pick up the business cards at 2828 North 23rd Street or any of the mission's 4 family outreach donation centers, or request for them to be mailed at opendoormission.org. It's a hand up instead of a hand out, Gregory said. Motorist Ann Eastman of La Vista says she thinks she's seen more panhandlers this summer than before at busy intersections. She works near Westroads Mall and sees a group of panhandlers who have a system and trade off shifts. but she said no panhandler has been aggressive toward her. Do I give them any money? I don't, she said. Do I want to help people who are down and out? I do. For his part, Rush says he does not drink or use drugs. He uses the panhandling money for food and lodging because his $450 per month from Social Security isn't enough for him to cover his basic needs.
The city budget fight continued Thursday with new Fire Chief Michael Despain explaining the delay in notifying the city council about a federal grant that would pay for 9 new firefighters for 2 years. The administration did not deliberately withhold information from the council about the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response, SAFER grant, said Despain during a morning news conference. In addition, the grant would not have made any difference in the current budget debate, so any delay in getting information made no difference in budget decisions, according to the chief. The delay occurred because fire department leaders were analyzing the potential effects of accepting the grant before making a recommendation to Mayor Chris Beitler on whether to move forward, Despain said. Any concerns that the mayor's office was purposefully holding the details of the pending grant award are without merit, as LFR staff was not able to provide a recommendation until August 17, he said. The next day, August 18, the mayor notified council members suggesting meetings the next week on the SAFER grant. Republican city council members contended earlier this week the administration deliberately withheld information that city had received the $1.46 million grant until it was too late to make any budget changes. Republicans were looking for cuts to make in Beitler's budget plan in order to avoid a tax rate hike. They had been told in July the federal grant might reduce the need for money for additional firefighters, Republicans have said. Several council members and Rick Hoppy, Beitler's chief of staff, clashed over the timing of the grant information when the council made final budget decisions on Monday. Councilman Trent Fellers raised the grant issue at Monday's meeting after he realized the SAFER grant, referenced in an email from the administration, was the specific firefighter grant that had been discussed during budget briefings in July. Fellers also discovered by looking online that the Federal Emergency Management Agency had released the grant information on August 12, about a week before council members got the email and 10 days before the final budget vote. During those July discussions, council members asked to be advised when the city got word about the firefighter grant, just in case it might affect budget decisions. The argument about deliberate delay continued in Republican responses to the mayor's budget veto this week. Councilwoman Cindy Lamb and Fellers, both Republicans, said Tuesday the mayor's staff withheld information from the council about that grant, and an editorial in Thursday's Journal Star chided the administration for the delay in providing information. But Despain said there was no delay because his initial reaction to the grant was not to accept it. After further investigation, Despain decided the city should accept the grant. His decision went to the administration on August 17, and emails inviting council members to meetings about the grant went out August 18. The SAFER grant would not have affected budget decisions because the city is staffing 6 more paramedic firefighters for an additional ambulance, and the grant cannot be used for staffing an ambulance, Despain said. The department is recommending the city accept the FEMA grant, which can be used to pay the salary of 9 firefighters, specifically to increase staffing levels on firefighting equipment. The issue will continue to come up publicly because the council must formally approve the grant funding and conditions.
The 2016 Nebraska State Fair opening weekend will start with a bang, with outdoor concerts today, Saturday, and Sunday, as well as 2 events not historically seen at the State Fair: a high school and college volleyball tournament at the Heartland Event Center, and for the 2nd straight year, the State Fair Marathon. The fair officially opens this morning for its 7th season since moving to Grand Island from Lincoln in 2010. A combination of the expected and unexpected is exactly what the Nebraska State Fair Board and staff members want, adapting and continually improving the fair to make it relevant and exciting to the people of Nebraska. Mixing the traditional with the new, the fair operators are constantly redefining what a state fair is all about. According to Joseph McDermott, the fair's executive director, sometime today, the state fair will welcome its 2 millionth visitor since moving to Grand Island. McDermott said the state fair was a little more than 15,000 people short of reaching that mark at the end of the 2015 fair. Last year on opening day, state fair attendance was around 19,000 people. While the opening outdoor concert drew 2,000 people in 2015, this year's outdoor concert, featuring Thomas Rhett and Jordan Rager, is expected to draw nearly 9,500 people. Also, the Bill Marshall Volleyball Classic, starting at 9:30 a.m. today at the Heartlands Event Center, is expected to draw a big crowd, which McDermott said nearly guarantees that the fair will hit that 2 million visitor mark. Hitting that milestone on the first day of the 2016 Nebraska State Fair is a huge accomplishment, McDermott said. When this fair moved to Grand Island, we really didn't know what to expect, he said. In my mind, and in some of the board members' minds, at that time, we thought we would be lucky to get 200,000 people. But the first year, we had 309,000, and it has grown considerably since then. What McDermott and the State Fair board members were concerned about was that there were no state fairs that were picking up and moving away from a major urban center, McDermott said. At the time, Grand Island had a population of 43,000 compared with Lincoln, which had more than 250,000 people. We moved away from the population base, McDermott said. That had never been done, and we didn't know what to expect. Maybe we were a little conservative, but we were pleasantly surprised. Last year, the 11-day state fair drew more than 350,000 visitors. Chris Kircher, who is from Omaha and is chairman of the State Fair Board, has been on the board for 4 years. He had not yet been to the State Fair in Grand Island when he was appointed to the board. But I have to say I was very impressed when I first came to the fair here in Grand Island, Kircher said. The differences were pretty fast to see between the fair in Lincoln and the fair in Grand Island. It was all new facilities and a lot of open space and very easy to navigate, and parking was pretty convenient. But what impressed Kircher the most was the amount of support Grand Island showed for the state fair. The number of volunteers is just huge, he said. We could not have had the success that we had without the kind of support we have got. This has helped us to make the fair bigger and better each year with the kind of support and participation. As the state fair expands each year, it is the support from Nebraska's 2 large metro areas, Omaha and Lincoln, that is helping to make the growth possible. Those 2 metro areas contain nearly 2/3 of Nebraska's 1.8 million population. Part of the goal is to get folks out here one time, as I think they will be pleasantly surprised from the eastern part of the state if they hadn't been out here, Kircher said. I think that each year we are getting better at getting the word out there and attracting people out here. There's still opportunity out there, but it is steadily growing. The Nebraska State Fair runs through September 5.
And at 47 minutes past the hour, we'll turn to the death and funeral notices. These from the Lincoln Journal-Star for Friday, August 26. Aguilera, Sharon J. Aguilera, was 71 and lived in Lincoln. The Aspen Aftercare Service. Barber, Loretta M. Barber, was 86 and lived in Beatrice. The Harmon Wright Mortuary in Beatrice. Beckman, Vida M. Beckman, lived in Pleasantdale, where she died at the age of 74. Memorials to the Lutheran Women's Missionary League, the Boltzke Funeral Home in Seward. Bro, Brian T. Bro, was 72 and lived in Omaha. He was a veteran. Memorials to the Nebraska chapter of American Parkinson Disease Association, the Heafy Hoffman Dworick and Cutler Bel Air Chapel at 12100 West Center Road. Busen, Stephen Shane Busen, was 46 and lived in Crete. He was a veteran serving in the U.S. Marine Corps. Memorial service will be held at 10 a.m. on Saturday, August 27 at Southview Baptist Church, the Roper and Sons Funeral Home, memorials to the family for future designation. Bustamante, Norman Bustamante, was 25 and lived in Lincoln. The Lincoln Family Funeral Care is handling arrangements. Clark, Shirley Ann Clark, was 82 and lived in Lincoln. Memorials to the family for future designation. Funeral services will be 10 a.m. Saturday, August 27 at Lincoln Memorial Park. Dam, that's D-A-M-M-E, Margaret Ann C. Dam, lived in Papillion, Nebraska, where she died at the age of 85 on August 23. Dawson, Magdalene C. Dawson, was 101 when she died on August 23. Dingledine, Dana J. Dingledine, was 61 and lived in Lincoln. Memorials may be directed to the family for future designation, the Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Disher, Juanita D. Disher, was 82 and lived in Lincoln. Memorials can be directed to the First Free Church Elevator Fund. The Marcy Svoboda Funeral Home is handling services. Dudley, Rose Marie Dudley, was 89 and lived in Lincoln. The Butheris, Mazer, and Love Funeral Home. Ellsworth, William Bill Eugene Ellsworth, was 74 when he died on August 20. The Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home. Graves, Roland Graves, lived in Salem, where he died at the age of 66 on August 23. Heater, Robert or Bob L. Heater, was 72 and lived in Lincoln, formerly in Beaver Crossing. He was a veteran serving in the U.S. Navy. Memorial service will be 10:30 a.m. on Monday, August 29 at United Methodist Church in Beaver Crossing, the Laubermore Funeral Home. Hennings, Ida Roberta Bobby Hennings, was 80 when she died in Beatrice on August 24. Memorials to the Mosaic in Beatrice, the Griffiths Hovendick Chapel in Beatrice. Johnson, Dorothy Ann Johnson, was 90 and lived in York. The Metz Mortuary in York is handling services. Memorials may be directed to the Presbyterian Memorial Foundation or Bethesda Lutheran Cemetery Association. Leach, Joan M. Leach, was 57 when she died in Tecumseh on August 23. Litt, Beverly Ann Litt, was 82 and lived in Lincoln. The Butheris, Mazer, and Love Funeral Home, in lieu of flowers, memorials to St. John's Catholic Church or the family for future designation. Macias, that's M-A-C-I-A-S, Josephine or Josie R. Macias, was 85 and lived in Friend. The Laubermore Funeral Home is handling arrangements, memorials to the United Methodist Church. Manley, Sharon K. Manley, was 68 and lived in Lincoln. The Roper and Sons Funeral Home, memorials care of the family. Mr. Charles or Charlie Michon Sr. was 91 and lived in Homer, Alaska. He was a veteran serving in the Army Air Corps during World War II. Services will be 2 p.m. on Saturday, August 26 at South Peninsula Hospital Long-Term Care in Homer, Alaska. In lieu of flowers, please send donations to B.J. Michon at 4300 Bartlett Street in Homer, Alaska. O'Brien, Terrence or Terry A. O'Brien, was 77 and lived in Wahoo. Marcy Svoboda Funeral Home in Wahoo is handling arrangements, memorials in care of the family. Olson, Ronald F. Olson, was 87 and lived in Lincoln. Services are pending at the Metcalf Funeral Home. Parday, Edward G. Parday, was 89 and lived in Adams. The Fox Funeral Home in Beatrice is handling arrangements, memorials to Zion Lutheran Church and the Freeman Public School Foundation. Peterson, Dean L. Peterson, was 89 and lived in Lincoln. He was a retired captain serving in the U.S. Navy. The Lincoln Memorial Funeral Home is handling services, memorials in lieu of flowers to the family for future designation. Price, Constance K. Connie Price, was 72 and lived in Milford. The West Lawn Hillcrest Memorial Park Cemetery in Omaha is where she will be buried. The Roper and Sons Funeral Home is handling arrangements. Ryman, Tara Walton Ryman, lived in Utica, formerly in Lincoln. Memorial services will be held at 11 a.m. Monday, August 29 at Christ Place Church in Lincoln. Sartori, John Edward Sartori Jr. was 87 when he died on August 16. Memorial services will be held at 2 p.m. August 28 at Trinity United Methodist Church in Ralston. Schaff, Dennis L. Schaff, was 69 and lived in Lincoln. The Roper and Sons Funeral Home, memorials care of the family. Schutz, James or Jim Edward Schutz of Avoca, was 74 when he died on August 21. Memorial services will be held 10:30 a.m. on August 27 at First Lutheran Church North Branch in Avoca. Speth, Dallas D. Speth, was 78 when he died in Steel City on August 22. Sweet Shirley Ruth Sturdy Sweet was 91 when she died in Casa Grande, Arizona on July 27. Celebration of life will be October 1 at Roper's Funeral Home in Lincoln. In lieu of flowers, donations may be sent to the local PBS television station. And that concludes obituaries from the Lincoln Journal-Star.
And from the Omaha World Herald, Anderson, Marjorie E. Anderson, age 83. Memorial service Monday, 11 a.m. at Pacific Hills Lutheran Church. There will be a complete notice later. Ephie Hoffman, DeWart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Archer, Bruce Digger Archer, age 75. Private memorial service to be held at a later date. Memorials to the Omaha Bikers Club. Reichmuth Funeral Homes on West Maple. Beagle, Robert J. Beagle, age 65, a veteran of the U.S. Marines serving in Vietnam. No services. Bob will be cremated. There is no funeral home listed. Booker, Douglas Carl Booker, age 54, a veteran of the Marines. No services. Nebraska Cremation Society is handling the arrangements. Bro, Brian T. Bro, age 72, a veteran. Massive Christian burial Monday, 11 a.m. at St. Robert Bellarmine Catholic Church with military honors by Benson VFW Post 2503. Memorials to Nebraska Chapter of American Parkinson's Disease Association. Ephie Hoffman, DeWart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Burns, Sally Ann Burns, maiden name Rose Slaboth, age 82. Massive Christian burial Monday, 10:30 a.m. St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church. Memorials to Poor Clare Sisters of Omaha or St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church. Ephie Hoffman, DeWart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Connolly, Joseph F. Connolly, age 74. Massive Christian burial Friday, 10:30 a.m. Holy Cross Catholic Church. He was a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, Honor Guard. Memorials to Mercy High School or Holy Cross Catholic Church. Ephie Hoffman, DeWart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Corbino, Michael G. Corbino, age 63. Memorial service Saturday, August 27 at 10 a.m. at Raider Mortuary on Ames Street. Dom, Margaret Ann Dom, age 85. Memorial service Sunday at 3 p.m. at Trinity Lutheran Church on Halleck Street in Papillion. Kaylor Dolch Mortuary in Papillion is handling the arrangements. Draney, Donald J. Draney, age 91, a veteran with military honors from VFW Post 2503. Memorials will be directed by the family. The Mass of Christian burial is at 10:30 a.m. at Holy Cross Catholic Church, Heafy Hoffman to Wart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Dungan, Sean M. Dungan, age 53. There will be a memorial visitation 2 to 4 p.m. Saturday. There is no funeral information listed. Memorials go to the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, John A. Gentleman Mortuaries on Pacific Street. Greaves, Ann M. Greaves, age 65, Memorial Mass, Saturday, 10 a.m. at St. Thomas More Catholic Church, Corisco Larkin Staskowitz Funeral Home on F Street. Griswold, Walter F. Walt Griswold, age 78, of Bellevue, Mass of Christian burial, St. John Cemetery. In lieu of flowers, memorials requested to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, Bethany Funeral Home on Harrison Street. Hayes, Laverne J. Hayes, age 72, a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. Please send memorials to the family. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries and Crematory on 72nd Street. Hinrichs, Melvin E. Hinrichs, age 80, Celebration of Life Memorial Service, 11 a.m. Saturday, August 27 at Kuntz Memorial Lutheran Church on Farnham Street. The family will direct memorials. Hoy Kanoski Funeral Home and Crematory on 16th Street. Hogner, Roseanne Hogner, Simple Cremation Services, Arbor Cremation Society on 125th Avenue. She was 48 years old. Kincaid, John L. Kincaid, age 46. Memorial service will be held 2 p.m. Saturday, August 27 at West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home. Kingray, David W. Dave Kingray Sr., age 75. Memorial service at 10 a.m. on Saturday, August 27 at Bellevue Memorial Chapel of Heafy Hoffman to Wart Cutler. Memorials will be directed by the family. Cool, Stan Cool, age 77, a veteran. Funeral service at 10 a.m. at John A. Gentleman Mortuary on 72nd Street. Doesn't give a date. Saturday, tomorrow. And John A. Gentleman Mortuaries is handling the arrangements. Lily, Michael J. Lilly, age 71, a veteran. Funeral service is 9 a.m. Saturday at West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home. Memorial sent in Michael's name to Kurz M.A. Attention Ali Zoiko in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. West Lawn Hillcrest Funeral Home. Malloy, Alice Jane Malloy, age 94. There will be a complete notice later. Memorial Mass is Wednesday, August 31 at St. Robert Bellarmine Catholic Church, Heafy Hoffman to Wart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Marcotte, Robert Delphus Marcotte Sr., age 91, a veteran serving as a first lieutenant in the Army Air Corps during World War II. Mass of Resurrection will be celebrated on Monday, 10 a.m. at Christ the King Church, South 86th Street. In lieu of flowers, contributions may be made in memory of Robert D. Marquette Sr. to Nebraska Game and Parks Foundation on North 33rd Street in Lincoln, Nebraska. Contributions for youth conservation projects can be specified. John A. Gentleman Mortuaries, 72nd Street Chapel. Maynard, Rosemary Maynard, age 89. Mass of Christian burial, 1:30 p.m., St. Robert Bellarmine Church. Memorials to St. Robert Bellarmine Catholic Church, Heafy Hoffman to Wart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. McMahon, Margaret A. McMahon, age 85. Services Friday at 10:30 a.m. at Bel Air Chapel of the Mary Our Queen Catholic Church. Heafy Hoffman to Wart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel is handling the arrangements. Memorials are suggested to Alzheimer Association or Mary Our Queen Catholic Church. Milder, Carl Pete Milder, age 94, graveside services Saturday, August 28th at 1 p.m. at Golden Hill. Memorials made to Temple, Israel, or Rose Blumpkin Jewish Home. The Jewish Funeral Home is handling the arrangements. Maloney, Joseph A. Maloney, age 61, great Omaha actor. Memorial service Saturday, 9 a.m. at Holy Cross Catholic Church. On Woolworth Street, memorials may be directed to the family. Heafy Hoffman to Wart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel. Monaco, Philip A. Monaco, age 91. There will be a complete notice later. Heafy Hoffman DeWart Cutler, Bel Air Chapel is handling the arrangements. Monson, Gerald Harry Jerry Monson, age 87, a veteran serving in the U.S. Air Force. Memorial service Saturday, September 3rd at 10:30 a.m. at Emmanuel Lutheran Church on Galvin Road. Memorials to the American Cancer Society or Emmanuel Lutheran Church. There is no funeral home listed. Nelson, Gustav H. Gus Nelson, age 88, a veteran of the U.S. Coast Guard. Funeral service Monday, 10 a.m. at Westminster Presbyterian Church on South 32nd Street. Memorials are suggested to Care Initiative, Hospice, or the Alzheimer's Association, Cutler, O'Neill, Meyer, Woodring, Bayless Park Chapel. Neerman, James G. Neerman, age 60. There was cremation. Raider Mortuary, Ames Chapel. Palusiak, Keith A. Palusiak, Pawlusiak, 58 years old. There will be a complete notice later. Carisco Larkin Stathquist Funeral Home on F Street. Satori, John Edward Satori Jr., age 87, a veteran serving in the U.S. Air Force during the Korean conflict. Memorial service 2 p.m. August 28 at Trinity United Methodist Church on Q Street in Ralston. Nebraska Cremation Society is handling the arrangements. Seidlich, Bernice Seidlich, maiden name Kusha, age 86. Funeral service Saturday, 10 a.m. at the mortuary, which is Rico Larskin Staskowitz Funeral Home on F Street. Smart, James M. Smart Sr., age 80, a veteran. Funeral services 10 a.m. Saturday at St. James Catholic Church on Larimore Avenue. Memorials to the Irvington Volunteer Fire Department and Rescue Squad. Raider Mortuary, 108th Street Chapel. Smart, Stephen Smart, age 58, of Springfield, Nebraska. Services 11 a.m. Saturday, August 27 at St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Springfield. Brahmin Mortuary on 104th Street. Walter Waters, Donna L. Waters, age 89. Funeral service 11 a.m. Saturday at Raider Mortuary. Memorials to the House of Hope. Raider Mortuary, 108th Street Chapel. And my final listing is Woods, Mark Hawken Woods, age 84, a veteran. Funeral service is Saturday, 2 p.m. at the Bel Air Chapel of Heafy Hoffman DeWart Cutler. Memorials are suggested to JDRF, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, or Habitat for Humanity.
Listeners, memorials to the Radio Talking Book Network are tax deductible, and they go a long way toward keeping us on the air. Please keep us in mind when memorials are listed as donor's choice or your favorite charity. Donations may be sent to the Radio Talking Book Network at 7101 Newport Avenue, Suite 205 in Omaha, Nebraska. Our zip is 68152. Thanks for being a Radio Talking Book Network listener and supporter, and Bob and I will be back following a short break with the day's editorials.
Oh man, we ran really late.
Pre-recorded film that runs 3 minutes.
Yeah, it was a lot of obituary.
The first thing we'd like to do is to play the
Joseph Maloney is quite a character. I did 2 shows with him.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, he's an amazing actor. Opera, comedy.
Cornbread, muffin with apple syrup, and a pint of
Thank you very much, and welcome to the meeting of today. Now, here is Robert Congress, the host of Weekend Radio, to tell us about this week's Weekend Radio show. I'm Robert Conrad, and I'm the top of the radio, and so we do is a program called Weekend Radio. It's that curiously strange and often potpourri of music with convivial companionship. This week, all of our kinds of John Banquet, Python, and Wetlight. You can hear it all, right? Weekend Radio is heard every Saturday at 3:30 p.m. And thank you very much, Robert Conrad. Now, Mrs. Angelica will tell us about this week's Saturday Night at the Movies presentation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Council here, and I would like to do a little promo for the movie that I had chosen for this week. For Saturday Night at the Movies, August 27, 2016, and that movie will be The Young Messiah. Paul and I actually went to the movies to watch this, and it is a fabulous movie. So I invite everyone to come on by, get your snacks, your food, your drinks, whatever your pleasures may be. Most of all, get that special someone to back, relax, and listen to The Young Messiah. Hope to see everyone there.
Thank you. Sure sounds like a good one. And as always, your turn to speak with everyone talking about network in Nebraska. A quick sermon online that we heard listeners for over 41 years. And Radio Talking Network is brought to you with the cooperation of KIOS and
Runs around behind the piano and does the entire song.
Stand by, channel
And the whole audience is just hysterics.
The second hour reading from today's Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star. Here once again are our stars, Ralph Morocco and Bob Godding.
Thank you, Paul, and welcome back, listeners. We'll start the second half with an opinion article in the World Herald entitled National Park Service Centennial, Wonders Worth Our Protection. Our nation has come a long way in its attitudes toward our natural, unspoiled areas. In the early days of European exploration and settlement, the newcomers often looked with hostility on what they termed the wilderness. When a group of Spaniards first encountered what we call the Grand Canyon, the written account says they weren't awed. All they saw was a huge obstacle blocking their progress. In 1620, William Bradford stepped off the Mayflower with fellow pilgrims, explored coastal Massachusetts, and declared the area a hideous and desolate wilderness they had a duty to subdue. 2 centuries later, John Plummer Jr., notable in the early history of Dubuque, wrote in his diary in 1839 that Iowa and Wisconsin were lands marked by the hardships and privations of the wilderness, a region to be conquered and civilized. Creating stable communities was an understandable goal for settlers, and the hardships were real. Still, a new sensibility slowly arose, respect for the unspoiled natural areas and the desire to protect them. Spirit akin to Native Americans' traditional reverence for the natural world. The country took its first step forward on this score in 1872, with legislation declaring the Yellowstone region a national park to be protected from injury or spoliation. In the decades that followed, figures such as a naturalist, John Muir, and President Theodore Roosevelt demonstrated forward-looking leadership on the issue. Then, in 1916, President Woodrow Wilson signed the legislation creating the National Park Service. The act moved beyond the piecemeal approaches of the past and established a coordinated structure for managing the nation's untamed areas. It's a century mark worthy of celebration. The National Park System now covers more than 84 million acres, with sites in every state. These federally protected natural and historical locales offer remarkable variety, including snorkel tours of underwater sites at Florida's Biscayne National Park, experiencing the unique island chain biosphere at Michigan's Isle Royale National Park, and taking in the stretches of lakes and streams at Alaska's Lake Clark National Park, with its 3 mountain ranges towering nearby. The National Park System includes 59 national parks, as well as federally designated national monuments such as Homestead, Agate Fossil Beds, and Scottsbluff in Nebraska, battlefields, historical parks and sites, plus scenic rivers, including Nebraska's Niobrara. During 2015, these sites were visited by more than 307 million Americans. The National Park Service has 22,000 staff members and 221,000 volunteers. Not only help visitors appreciate our country's natural wonders, they also help them understand our history in locales as different as Gettysburg, the Golden Spike site in Utah, and Herbert Hoover's birthplace in Iowa. Among our best-known national parks is Yosemite in California. After camping there, Theodore Roosevelt wrote that it was like lying in a great solemn cathedral, far vaster and more beautiful than any built by the hand of men. Americans, he said, should work to ensure that such areas of natural splendor are preserved for their children and their children's children forever, with their majestic beauty all unmarred. This is an enduring responsibility, one that each new generation of Americans has the duty to honor and uphold.
And these are letters to the editor appearing in the Journal Star. Bill Eddy of Lincoln writes, I was impressed by Donald Trump's diligence and imagination when he went hunting for 4 Nebraskans to serve on his Ag Committee. Trump's campaign searched far and wide across the breadth of Nebraska to find 4 guys who would represent the state's ag diversity on the committee. First, the Trump campaign went to Falls City, where it found Charles Herbster, owner of the Conklin Manufacturing Company and one-time contender for governor. Next, the Trump campaign went to Falls City, where it found Dave Heineman, former Nebraska governor, who now works for Herbster. Then the Trump campaign went to Falls City, where it found Bo McCoy, a Heineman clone who ran for governor on the checkbook of Charles Herbster and now works for Herbster. Somehow the Trump campaign got sidetracked and stopped in Lincoln to pick up Governor Pete Ricketts, who has never lived or worked in Falls City, but did include Falls City on his 2016 ag tour. At least a tiny fraction of the state should be well served on Trump's committee. And Joan Zaleski Martin of Lincoln writes, I am writing to offer a huge thank you to all the pedestrians, runners, and bikers that wear white, light, bright, or neon-colored clothing with or without the reflective tape. They are so much easier to see than those that wear the dark clothing. I've had numerous times when traffic is busy and I'm trying to turn right only to look again, sometimes for the 4th or 5th time, and discover a biker or pedestrian I didn't see the moment prior. The lighter, brighter attire makes pedestrians and cyclists stand out from the background. Thank you for making yourself safer by being more easily seen.
The public pulse from the Omaha World Herald, Vince Furlong of Omaha writes, Dodge Street might be Omaha's most significant street, both historically and practically. The city named it in an area of civic importance, but now a towering, flashing digital billboard on the south side of Dodge Street near 44th Street has suddenly appeared. Residents of this area are trying to maintain its historic look and the appeal of the nearby neighborhoods. Younger generations are moving back to the heart of the city for its walkability, historic feel, and economic opportunities. Who made the decision to violate the neighborhood with a neon replica from the dystopian city in Blade Runner? Dave Sund of Omaha writes, in response to Jeremy Aspen's August 23 public pulse letter, I feel compelled to correct some of his revisionist history about the 2011 recall election of Omaha Mayor Jim Suttle. The truth is that Suttle made some tough but necessary choices, and some people disagreed with those choices. But rather than using ordinary means to express their disagreement, Aspen and his wealthy benefactors chose to engage in a reckless attempt to recall a mayor over policy disagreement. A majority of Omahans rejected this choice, and it's disappointing to see any reflection on Aspen's part on what would have happened had he been successful. Eventually, the regularly scheduled election took place and Suttle lost. Such is the will of the voters. Next spring, the voters will have a chance to assess Mayor Gene Stothard's record for themselves, a chance Aspen and his friends would never have given Jim Suttle. Barbara Anderson of Waterloo, Nebraska writes, August 18 public pulse writer Alan Jacobson was absolutely correct about the tragic situation in White Clay, Nebraska. The governor's task force offered no solutions to the underlying problem that a village of 14 people sells more than 3 million cans of beer each year. Could any other village similar in size acquire even one liquor license, much less 4, under those circumstances? More law enforcement and treatment centers to treat out-of-state citizens shouldn't be needed. Isn't that just putting a lipstick on a pig approach to quiet those who are deeply concerned? Larry L. Kennedy of Omaha writes, The late, great Paul Harvey used to say, ignorance is contagious. I hope not. Apparently, the August 15 Public Pulse writer who referred to Nebraska U.S. Representative Brad Ashford's do-nothing Congress is ignorant of the fact that the Republicans have controlled on Congress for the past several years. Electing another right-wing ideologue to represent the 2nd Congressional District will only add to the do-nothing gridlock. Ashford has demonstrated that he can and will work with lawmakers who have all kinds of different ideas. He represents us well without having a rigid my way or the highway mentality. Ashford is the Nebraska way and has the resume to prove it. And Mark Darby of Omaha writes, the referendum on the death penalty, which might not have made it onto the ballot if not for Pete Ricketts' personal donation, is an opportunity to end capital punishment in our state once and for all. The death penalty is more an expression of racism than justice. The color of a person's skin or the thickness of their wallet is a better predictor of who will get the death penalty than the gravity of a crime. To be an effective deterrent, the death penalty must be fairly applied. This has never been the case. Justice is not vengeance. Justice is treating people equally before the law and punishing them in accordance with their actions.
And this is Dana Milbank's column from the Washington Post Writers Group appearing in the Journal Star. In choosing Stephen Bannon to be the CEO of his campaign, Donald Trump has accomplished the extraordinary. He's found somebody as outrageous as he is. Bannon, who has been publisher of the far-right website Breitbart, has called the Pope a commie and said Catholics are trying to boost Hispanic immigration because their church is dying. He called Gabby Giffords, the former congresswoman who was shot in the head, a human shield, and the mayor of London a radical Muslim. Hillary Clinton, in Bannon's telling, is a grifter who would take the country to the last days of Sodom. The new Trump advisor calls himself a populist nationalist. His hiring has been cheered by white supremacists and calls his fellow believers a small, crazy wing of the conservative movement. He has referred to the Civil War as the War of Southern Independence, fought over economic development. He found zero evidence of racial motives in the Trayvon Martin shooting and warned that cities could be washed away in an orgy of de-gentrification. The Trump campaign's chief executive believes the Obama administration is importing more hating Muslims and asks whether Clinton is complicit in a fifth column. He doesn't think Huma Abedin, a Muslim aide to Clinton, should have a security clearance, and he has alleged that Clinton's vice presidential nominee, Senator Tim Kaine, has an affiliation with the Muslim Brotherhood. He argued that Gretchen Carlson's sexual harassment case, which forced the ouster of Roger Ailes at Fox News, was a total dud, and he alleged the existence of a militant feminist legal wrecking crew. Fox News, in Bannon's view, is a centrist outlet, and compared to Breitbart, it most certainly is. The site, which was closer to the mainstream under its late founder, Andrew Breitbart, has run these headlines under Bannon's leadership. Birth control makes women unattractive and crazy. Political correctness protects Muslim rape culture. Suck it up, Buttercup's dangerous faggot tour returns to colleges in September. The solution to online harassment is simple. Women should log off. 2 months left until Obama gives dictators control of the internet. Bannon's Breitbart said the gay pride flag is viewed as a symbol of anti-Christian hate and said birth control makes a woman into a slut and a hideous monster. Trump echoes conspiracy theories proposed by Breitbart, and Breitbart has relentlessly promoted Trump. In short, Trump found in Bannon a character like himself, a bully who targets racial and religious minorities, immigrants, and women. In his writings and broadcast commentary, Bannon, a veteran and former banker, has argued that immigrants, legal as well as illegal, are to blame for crime, terrorism, and disease. He disparages anchor babies and says FBI Director James Comey's recommendation not to prosecute Clinton is inextricably linked to anti-police violence. He speaks of Megyn Kelly's blonde ambition and alleges that the military is trying to eradicate Christianity. Breitbart has a tag for black crime and stokes fear of race wars with headlines such as "Race Murder in Virginia," "Black Suspect Stalk Robbery Victim in Philadelphia," "Black Rape Gang Violates 2 Detroit Women," and "Black Mob Swarms Georgia Walmart to see how much damage they could do." The Southern Poverty Law Center protests that Breitbart has been openly promoting the core issues of the alt-right, introducing these racist ideas to its readership. Breitbart ran a doctored photo showing House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi in a bikini on all fours with her tongue out. It alleged a smoking gun connection between the 9/11 hackers to a Bush family friend. There is more, but you don't need to read it here. Just wait for Trump to say it.
We'll turn now to today's living and entertainment. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Nebraska will be the presenting sponsor of the 2016 Holiday Lights Festival. The insurer has made a 3-year commitment to the festival, Mayor Jean Stothert announced at a press conference Thursday. The festival, produced by the mayor's office and the Downtown Omaha Incorporated Foundation, is a 5-week showcase consisting of more than 40 blocks of white lights and other attractions. It will kick off with a lighting ceremony from 6 to 7 p.m. on November 24 at the Jean Leahy Mall and last through January 1. We're very proud to sponsor this wonderful Omaha tradition. We see this as an investment in our community we are proud to call home. Pat Bourne, Blue Cross Blue Shield Senior Vice President, said in a statement, "The insurer becomes the festival's biggest financial backer. It replaces ConAgra Foods, the presenting sponsor of the Lights Festival since 2002. This year, the food manufacturer moved its headquarters to Chicago while maintaining about 1,200 jobs at the downtown campus in Omaha. ConAgra will still be very involved in the Holiday Lights Festival," Stothert said, "but Blue Cross Blue Shield certainly stepped up, and we're very, very grateful for that." Chris Kircher, Vice President of Corporate Affairs for ConAgra, said the company wants to redirect its resources to the Shine the Light on Hunger campaign, in which Omahans are invited to donate non-perishable food, household items, and money to benefit the food bank for the Heartland. ConAgra still will sponsor the food drive and its ice skating rink. This year, though, the rink is moving from the ConAgra campus to a temporary location east of 10th Street and between Capitol Avenue and Dodge Street. In 2017, it moves to a permanent site in the Capital District. We came to the conclusion that our resources, because we still want to be engaged in the community for our 1,200 employees and their families, the natural thing to do here is to make that transition over to the Capital District and deploy our resources on the Shine the Light on Hunger campaign, Kircher said. Blue Cross Blue Shield also announced Thursday that it will give more than $150,000 in grant money to several Nebraska organizations, including 3 Omaha nonprofits. The money will be given as part of Blue Cross Blue Shield's Fearless Grant Program, an effort to give more than $1 million statewide in grants, sponsorships, and community investment. The Omaha organizations receiving money are Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Midlands, which received $6,000 to fund the overall cost of the mentoring program. Sienna Francis House Homeless Shelter, which received $10,000 to support the shelter's addiction recovery and mental health programs, and Food Bank of the Heartland, which received $20,000 for its fresh produce program. Other grant recipients include the Nebraska Lions Foundation, Loop City's Central Nebraska Community Action Partnership, and Grand Island's Hope Harbor.
And this is the Ask Amy column appearing in the Journal Star, written by Amy Dickinson. Dear Amy, my wife and I have been together for about 14 years. We have 4 children, ranging in age from teens to a toddler. We're both 36. Over the past year or so, we have had a few bumps in the road, including having an unexpected child who was born with health problems, my wife's family moving in with us, we later had to evict them, an arrest, mine, and her having manic episode and being committed to a mental hospital for 6 days. She has been regulated on her meds and seems to be doing a lot better with everything. She's a stay-at-home mom. When I get home, I give her a break. She goes into her room and listens to music, writes in her journal, or goes on social media sites. While this is fine with me, over the last few weeks, it's becoming an issue. I feel ignored. I did something I shouldn't have done, and I read her journal. I had to see what was wrong with her. Her journal noted that she has always had self-esteem issues. It also stated that she has been trying to make herself more attractive because she craves attention, which I try to give to her, that she has become bored and sees risky behavior approaching. She didn't write anything more for 2 days. The next entry was about how I was jealous of a male friend of ours because they message a lot on Facebook. She wrote that she has no interest in him or anyone else. She said that I need to get past it. I believe all of this is leading us to a path of divorce, lies, and cheating. Should I bring this all up? Should I try to change something I'm doing? I don't know where to go from here and how to fix this. I honestly feel she still loves me, but maybe isn't in love with me anymore. I want her to be happy. Your thoughts? Signed, Worried. Dear Worried, my first thought is that the main thing you can change is to get your face out of your wife's private diary. If you're concerned about lying and cheating, perhaps you should look in the mirror. Reading her diary is disrespect of the first order. Your wife might be approaching another manic episode. If you're worried about this, you should discuss it with her. If you are jealous of her friendship with another man, you should be honest about it and then consider trusting her if she says she isn't into him. You have glossed over your own actions. You mention you were arrested, but you don't say why. She's expressing some things in her diary that she should also express to you, but she has the right to her private thoughts and expressions. You two should see a therapist together to discuss your considerable family stressors and work on how to communicate more effectively and respectfully. Dear Amy, I have a friend I have been seeing once a week for coffee. It feels like a one-sided relationship to me in that she spends most of the time talking about herself. I am a good listener and ask her questions, but sometimes I feel like I'm more her therapist than her friend. I've decided after months of this that I was going to make myself less available, and that has worked out. I had not seen her for several months until a few weeks ago, and the same pattern is there, but the rub is this: she will barely look me in the eyes. I don't know what to make of it. I keep thinking if she didn't want to see me, she'd make excuses, but she doesn't. But whether she's talking about herself or listening to me, she won't make eye contact. It's just really weird, and it makes me feel like something is wrong with me. I'm thinking about just coming right out and asking her, what would you suggest? Signed, Friend. Dear friend, eye contact is a sign of intimacy and comfort. By all means, ask your friend why she won't meet your eye. Dear Amy, Sad was an older sister who was worried about her teen sister's use of the drug Molly. I appreciated your answer, but you weren't strong enough. A girl in our town overdosed on this drug. It is very dangerous. Signed, Worried. Dear Worried, new and synthetic drugs seem to be flooding into our communities.
As word spread Wednesday that Ghostbusters star Leslie Jones had been the victim of another vicious online attack, her personal website was hacked, reportedly displaying images of private documents and nude photos. Fans and celebrities flooded social media with messages of support. They joined hundreds who decried the online abuse as racism and misogyny at its worst. But pop star Katy Perry took it a step further in a tweet to her 92 million followers, using a particular term to describe the attack on Jones: misogyny noir. Do not give your eyeballs to this racist-filled misogyny noir crime. I stand with Leslie. This immediately caught the attention of Twitter users who understood the word's significance. So why were they so surprised? Besides the fact that Perry has drawn plenty of criticism in the past for her racial insensitivity, The term misogyny noir isn't one that gets a lot of attention in the white mainstream world. The word was coined by Black queer feminist scholar Moya Bailey, a professor at Northeastern University, to describe the particular brand of hatred directed at Black women in American visual and popular culture, as she wrote in an essay in 2014. The term applies specifically to Black women alone and not other women of color. She noted in a Tumblr post, "What happens to Black women in public space isn't about them being any woman of color. It is particular, and it has to do with the ways that anti-Blackness and misogyny combine to malign Black women in our world." After Bailey introduced the term on the Big Crunk Feminist Collective, it began to circulate in social justice and feminist circles. But it never circulated so widely or rapidly as it did after Perry tweeted it. By Thursday morning, Perry's message had been retweeted nearly 10,000 times, and Google searches for misogyny noir had spiked sharply. Not everyone was entirely charmed. Some feminists on Twitter noted the irony that misogyny noir made headlines only after a famous white woman used the term. And others pointed out that Perry's woke moment didn't erase her history of cultural appropriation. But in this instant, Perry's use of the word created within the Black community was fitting. And it's a safe bet that most of her online followers hadn't heard it before she tweeted it, which means that a lot more people might now have a better understanding of the unique kind of racism and misogyny faced by prominent Black women like Jones.
This is Dr. Roseman's parenting column appearing in the Journal Star. In a recent column, you advised that step-parents have complete disciplinary authority over all children who live in or visit the home. But do you feel the same policy should apply when the step-parent joins the family when the kids are teenagers instead of younger children? Your question is and Dr. Roseman replies, your question is of great importance in a parenting culture where so many parents are bringing children into second marriages. It is also important for adults in so-called step families to understand that the majority of mental health professionals are giving decidedly bad advice concerning this issue. To wit, that parents should only discipline their own, as in biological or adoptive children. As I said in the column to which you referred, this is a recipe for a second divorce. My authority in this area rests on personal as well as professional experience. My parents divorced early in my life, and my mother remarried when I was 7. Before the second marriage took place, she informed me that what my stepfather-to-be told me to do, I was to do, period. Under no circumstances was I to come complaining to her about his rules, instructions, or discipline. I did not like it, but my mother's policy was clearly in the best interest of our new family. Therefore, it was in my best interests as well. The party line in child and family psychology has it that this arrangement causes resentment in a non-biological child, thus their position. Mental health professionals essentially advise, as they generally have for 50 years, that a child's feeling about an issue should rule or at least be of significant consideration. Two facts should be taken into account. First, children do not know what is in their best interests. Second, a child's emotional reactions are often irrational in that they do not reflect either a wide-angle or long-range view. That assessment applies significantly to teenagers. With that in mind, yes, a step-parent's authority in the home ought to be unequivocal, but that requires a pre-existing condition, which is that both the biological parent and the step-parent are on the same page concerning child-rearing matters. That also requires a pre-existing condition, which is that the primary relationship is the new family between husband and wife. When mom and dad are not on the same page, it simply means one or both of them values the relationship with child or children over the relationship with spouse. Said another way, when married adults are husband and wife first, mom and dad second, agreement concerning child rearing issues will be relatively easy. On the other hand, if the biological parent identifies with her children's emotional reactions to the step-parent's rules, instructions, and discipline and responds protectively, which is an operational definition of codependency, the new family's integrity is in deep trouble. The bottom line is that, as my mother did, people should get these issues straightened out before a new marriage with children takes place. In this case, striking while the iron is cold is the best policy.
In Heloise Household Hints, dear Heloise, I wanted to add to a reader's hint in your column, which I read every day in the Orange County, California Register. Ann S. suggested taking pictures of the odometer to keep track of her mileage. I go one step further by texting the picture to my email address. Not only can I view it on my home computer, but I also have a backup copy in case my phone is lost or damaged. I also do this for medical forms that I sign at the doctor's office, and I have used it to dispute the purported gas tank level on a rental car. Signed, Jolene G. from Anaheim, California. Heloise responds, dear readers, this hint came from a concerned consulate worker in Houston, and I thought it was a good follow-up to our column related to traveling with medicine. May I also suggest that those who intend to travel internationally contact the local consulate associated with the country they intend to visit to ensure that there are no restrictions on their medications. Please don't rely on the internet or travel agent to know all the laws of the place to which you are traveling. It would be a shame to go through airport customs only to have your medicine confiscated. Dear Heloise, help, I am so clumsy. I spilled nail polish on my favorite cotton blouse. What is the best way to remove the stain without ruining the blouse, or am I out of luck? Signed, Carrie G., desperate in Seattle. Heloise responds, all isn't lost. For washable fabric like cotton, try using an acetone-based nail polish remover that doesn't have any additives such as aloe, fragrances, etc. Test a hidden area of the blouse by dabbing a little remover. If the color doesn't bleed, proceed. Place the stain on a stack of paper towels, then pour about half a capful of remover on and dab with clean paper towels. Continue the process until the stain is gone, then wash as usual. On a side note, be sure your nails aren't polished when using this hint, because this may create a much bigger problem when cleaning the blouse. Dear readers, if you're a hiker, be sure to include old compact discs for each member of your hiking party when packing your own hiking gear. Before the hike, give each member one to carry with his or her gear. In an emergency, they can be used as a reflector should you get lost, separated, or someone is injured.
And we'll turn now to business pages. Yesterday was a generally soft day for stocks on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrials was down 33.07 at 18,448.41. NASDAQ was off 5.49 to 5,212.2. And the S&P 500 eased down 2.97 at 2,172.47. It's still showing a gain of 6.3% year to date. Oil for delivery in October was up 56 cents to settle at $47.33. First National Bank of Omaha will pay more than $35 million in restitution and fines for deceptive marketing practices and illegal billing of add-on products. The bank, the largest in Nebraska with $18.4 billion in assets, agreed to consent orders levied by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, which were made public Thursday. The bank will pay a $3 million civil penalty to the OCC, a $4.5 million civil penalty to the CFPB, and nearly $27.8 million in restitution to roughly 257,000 customers. The orders stem from First National's use of debt-canceling add-on products and credit monitoring services between 1997 and 2012. According to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, First National disguised its sales tactics, failed to make it clear customers were purchasing a product, made it hard to cancel debt cancellation products, and billed them for credit protection services they never received. First National Bank of Omaha violated the trust of its customers by illegally signing them up for credit card add-on products, CFPB Director Richard Cordray said in a news release. First National, in a statement, took responsibility for the practices, although it said the issue with the credit monitoring products were mostly the fault of a third-party vendor. It said it ended sales of both products in 2012 after a government audit revealed the problems. The vendor, Affinion Group Holdings, was ordered by the CFPB last year to pay $6.8 million in restitution and a $1.9 million fine for its marketing practices. In a statement, First National President Dan O'Neill offered an apology for failing to provide our intended customer experience. At First National Bank, we know it's our responsibility to ensure that our customers receive all of the advertised benefits of any product we are involved in marketing, whether directly or indirectly, O'Neill said. While the bank did not intentionally mislead our customers, our oversight of the products and the vendor that was administering these products was lacking. O'Neill said the bank has already set aside additional reserves to pay the fines and restitution.
In business briefs, the Obama administration is nominating current World Bank President Jim Yong Kim for a second term, leading the 189-nation international lending organization. Treasury Secretary Jacob Lew on Thursday praised Kim for his first term at the World Bank to effectively address today's most pressing global challenges in innovative ways, from ending extreme poverty and tackling inequality to combating climate change. Sears posted a second quarter loss with perpetually weak sales overshadowing the retailer's efforts to cut costs and slow its cash burn. CEO Edward Lampert's hedge fund will forward the ailing chain $300 million in additional debt financing. Sears posted sales declines across the board, including home appliances and lawn and garden tools. Sears had been selling assets to raise cash and accelerating store closures. Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's Omaha-based company, now controls more than 15% of Phillips 66 stock after buying an additional 414,065 shares of the oil refinery this week. Orders to U.S. factories for big-ticket manufactured goods surged 4.4% in July, rebounding from a 4.2% plunge in June. The Commerce Department reported Thursday the changes were driven by swings in the commercial aircraft area, a category that serves as a proxy for business investment. Rose 1.6% in July, up from 0.5% rise in June. It was the best showing in this category in 6 months.
And it is now time to turn to sports pages in each of our papers. And we'll begin with news from the baseball world. Cole Hamels allowed only 2 singles over 8 innings for his 14th victory. Carlos Gomez hit a 3-run homer in his first at-bat with Texas, and the AL Best Rangers beat the Cleveland Indians 9-0 on Thursday night at Arlington, Texas, in the opener of a 4-game series, matching division leaders. Hamels, 14-4 now, retired 19 straight batters after Francisco Lindor's solid 2-out single to left in the first. The only other base runner for the Indians was Carlos Santana after a leadoff single in the 8th, although he was stranded at second after advancing on a passed ball. Adrian Beltre and Ronald Arder also homered for the Rangers, now 75 and 53. Hamels struck out 8 without a walk, and the lefty improved to 21-5 in his 38 starts since the Rangers acquired him last season, when he was coming off a no-hitter in his last start for the Philadelphia Phillies. In baseball action yesterday, the Reds edged the Red Sox 2-1. It was the Tigers over the Twins 8-5. The Angels beat the Blue Jays 6-3. Of course, the Rangers blanked the Indians 9-0. It was the White Sox edging the Mariners 7-6. In the National League, the Nationals blanked the Orioles 4-0. It was the Royals beating the Marlins 5-2. The Mets beat the Cardinals 10-6. The Pirates edged the Brewers 3-2 in 10 innings. It was the Braves over the Diamondbacks, and the Giants played the Dodgers on the West Coast, so no score in that late played game.
In Nebraska football news, Nebraska suspended senior starters Brandon Riley and Nate Gary for the season opener against Fresno State. Coach Mike Riley announced after Thursday's practice. Both players, Riley said, violated team rules. He declined to elaborate. Riley also confirmed the transfer of freshman wide receiver Darian Grimm, who wrote a short goodbye to NU fans and teammates on Twitter and had returned to California by Thursday. Riley pleaded guilty this summer to first offense DUI. Riley was sentenced to 7 days house arrest, which he completed in mid-June. Riley caught 40 passes for 754 yards last season and was one of quarterback Tommy Armstrong's top targets. The Huskers' considerable depth at the position, which includes Jordan Westerkamp, Stanley Morgan, Alonzo Moore, and DeMornay Pearson-L, means NU should be able to absorb Riley's absence. The absence of Gary, a two-year starter, and the quarterback of the defense may be more difficult void to fill. The Huskers will use a trio of safeties, junior Kyrian Williams and sophomore Aaron Williams and Antonio Reed at the safety spot against the Bulldogs. I haven't told them who specifically will step on the field as of right now because they are all close from a standpoint of the order, said defensive coordinator Mark Banker, who graded both scrimmages and an additional red ball period. NU's defense has practiced playing without Gary. He missed the second halves of both the 28-20 loss to Iowa and the 37-29 bowl win over UCLA because of targeting penalty ejections. Gary's absence was deeply felt in the Iowa loss as the Hawkeyes busted two long third-quarter touchdown runs. Aaron Williams started 3 games last season, including the bowl game. Kyrian Williams and Reed have been primarily special team performers. Reed missed spring camp while rehabbing from a shoulder injury, and Kyrian Williams, Banker said, has made a jump with more reps in the defense, specifically in translating what he learns in the film room to the practice field. Kyrian's come along, and the one thing, ever since I met the man last year, he's always somebody who's asked questions, Banker said. He's always up in the office. Banker told the World Herald that the hardest part of replacing Gary is the vocal leadership aspect. Gary was responsible to some degree for making sure the defense was in the right spot. Aaron Williams, Banker said, is the most vocal of the 3, while Reed is a little quiet. Kyrian Williams, Banker said, is vocal, but Banker wants to make sure he's saying the right stuff before the play. Banker coaches the safeties. Was he frustrated by Gary's suspension? I don't know what you'd call it, Banker said. Decision-making, it's not frustration. Disappointment, to an extent. He's disappointed as well, but this too shall pass. We go forward, looking forward to getting him back in the fold because, number 1, he's a good person, and number 2, he's a good leader. He plays his position well. Both players will return for NU's second game against Wyoming. Nebraska suspended 5 players for the 2015 season opener as well. Grimm, on the other hand, is gone before he ever played it down at Nebraska. He enrolled early, earned praise from coaches and teammates in spring camp and training camp, and left because it wasn't the right fit, said Grimm's father, Latef. Riley said NU captain and black shirts will be announced in the next 5 days. The Huskers will hold a Saturday night practice at Memorial Stadium for Nebraska students.
The Big Ten Conference released its 2016-17 men's basketball schedule Thursday, and Nebraska will begin the season with road games against Indiana and Maryland. Nebraska had begun the previous 2 Big Ten seasons with home games, including 2 straight home games to begin last season. The Huskers' first Big Ten home game is January 5 against Iowa. They close the conference season 2 months later, March 5, at home against Michigan. Here's Nebraska's complete Big Ten schedule. Times and TV information will be announced later. December 28th, we open at Indiana, then January 1 at Maryland, followed by Iowa, Northwestern, Michigan, Ohio State, Rutgers, Northwestern, Purdue, too many to go through here. Meanwhile, two of NU's non-conference home games have been selected for national television. The Huskers opener against Sacramento State on November 13 will tip off at 7 p.m. and be televised on BTN, while Nebraska's annual matchup with Creighton on December 7 will also be televised on BTN with an 8 p.m. tip-off at Pinnacle Bank Arena. The last 7 Husker non-conference games have been selected for broadcast, including all 3 games from the Wooden legacy. NU opens tournament play against Dayton on Thanksgiving night at 7:30 p.m. on ESPNU. The other games of the Wooden legacy will be carried on various ESPN channels. Nebraska's game at Kansas on December 10 will tip off at 2:15 p.m. and be televised by ESPN, while the Huskers' ACC Big Ten Challenge game at Clemson on November 30 will be televised on ESPNU with an 8 p.m. tip-off. Other non-conference games should be picked up for television as the Big Ten's TV partners release their non-conference schedule in the coming weeks. Every Big Ten game is broadcast nationally on the league's TV partners, CBS, BTN, ESPN, ESPN2, and ESPNU. And that schedule will be announced later this summer. Season tickets go on sale September 1 at 10 a.m. at visiting Huskers.com. By visiting Huskers.com/tickets or by calling 800-8-BIG-RED.
In Nebraska volleyball news, during the 2 most formative weekends of last season's NCAA championship run, the Nebraska volleyball team won a combined 1 win, 3 losses. An early season loss to Texas at the Vert Challenge revamped Nebraska's lineup. Back-to-back home losses to Minnesota and Wisconsin in October reshaped the team's attitude. But the Huskers now admit they learned much from those failures. After practice Tuesday and again a couple of hours later on his weekly radio show, Coach John Cook trotted out a bromide from Mike Tyson. Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. There are no tune-up fights for number 1 Nebraska as it opens defense of its national championship this weekend at the Vert Challenge, played this year in Eugene, Oregon. 2 heavyweights await, number 10 Florida on Friday at 6 p.m. and number 2 Texas on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Both matches will be streamed live at Pac12.com. It just gives you a really big head start as far as where you are and where you need to go, Nebraska middle blocker Amber Rolfson said. Last year, obviously, the Wisconsin-Minnesota weekend, it was way at the end of the season where we finally figured out what we need to work on. But right away, it allows us to see where we are. If we're number 1, like we should be, Florida and Texas return talent-backed rosters from teams that made deep runs into last year's postseason. The Gators may have the nation's most dynamic athlete in 6'4" middle blocker Ramat Ahalson, who was second in the country last year, averaging 1.6 blocks per set on the way to first-team All-American honors. Florida also brings back starting outside hitter Carly Snyder and opposite hitter Alex Holston, a 2015 third-team All-American and the leading attacker for a Gator team that lost a 5-set heartbreaker to Texas in the regional finals. What won't be clear until Friday is which setter Florida coach Mary Wise will use. Veteran Abby Dietering transferred to Penn State in the offseason, leaving Weiss to choose between 6'2" freshman Cheyenne Husky and 5'9" sophomore Ali Monzeres. We just know they have really good middles and outsides that run some different things, NU outside hitter Michaela Folk said. Many familiar faces will be on the court for Saturday's national championship rematch with Texas. The Longhorns add another class of high school All-Americans to a lineup that returns starting outside hitter Paulina Prieto Cerame and setter Chloe Collins. Texas coach Jarrett Elliott has a problem most coaches would love at opposite, where 2014 NCAA Freshman of the Year Ebony Nwanbu is back after missing all but 1 match a year ago with a foot injury. That 1 match, Nwanbu had 22 kills in the 5-set win over Nebraska in Austin. Will the Longhorns start a healthy Nwanbu or go with sophomore opposite Yasan Badargani, who caught fire during Texas's run to the national title match last year. Texas was dealt a recent blow in the middle when Elliott announced that All-American Chiaka Ogbogo would sit out the season to focus on academics, but the addition of freshman middle Ori Abaji, a top 5 national recruit out of Kansas City, should ease that loss. Despite the temptation of opening the two top 10 opponents, Nebraska can't get caught up early in early season bragging rights, Cook said. The Vert Challenge must be a tool to sharpen the Husker strategy to win the Big Ten title and another national championship. After losing to the Longhorns early last year, Cook reshuffled the lineup to switch Katie Rolson to opposite and brought Folk over to outside hitter. Senior Kelsey Finn moved to start at the other outside hitter spot, replacing Anika Albrecht, who has wowed coaches in preseason practice. That was the lineup that ultimately brought Nebraska a 4th NCAA title. NU returns 5 starters from last season and adds 2 decorated transfers. Yet the Huskers still have some decisions to make about rotations and lineups. The Vert Challenge is only the first chance to land a punch this season, but it's an opening round the college volleyball world will have its eyes on. We're going to get exposed to our weaknesses. We're going to find out what we've got to get better at, Cook said, because at the level of those teams, you're not going to blow your RPI on the first weekend if you don't win all the matches. It's really just a great test to see where you're at.
And it is top of the hour, so time for us to make way for other programming on the Radio Talking Book Network. I'm Ralph Morocco. It's been my pleasure to be with you. Look forward to doing it next week.
And this is Bob Gotting. It has been a pleasure reading for you today. Have a wonderful week, and we will talk to you next week.
And thank you, gentlemen, very, very much. It's always a pleasure.
And don't forget your glasses next time, Bob.
Keep us informed by your reading from the Omaha World Herald and the Lincoln Journal-Star. Thank you very much.
Market's off today.
Is it? I didn't look.
Yeah, Dow's down 4.